Life unfolds on land that is constantly reshaped over time. The air is heavy with river mist, warm and slow, pressing against the skin. Somewhere in the distance, water moves through unseen bends, carrying silt, memory, and silence. Wind slips through thick forest, bending branches that have never known roads, never known names. And yet this place is not static. It continues to change. Today, this is a walk through the entire history of Tennessee. Not as legend, but as lived ground, reconstructed through landscapes, records, and the patterns that refuse to disappear. This is Tennessee, before it was Tennessee, a place shaped not by borders but by pressure, where land, power, and movement never settle for long. 7 paths unfold across time, from first footsteps to modern cities. With each phase, the historical complexity increases. With each era, something is taken and something replaces it. The ground is colder at first. Water runs wider than expected, uncontained, shifting with no fixed edge. The forests are thinner, opening to long stretches of earth where movement is easier, but never safe. Small groups move across this land in silence, carrying only what they can hold. Their steps follow animals that dominate the horizon. Massive bodies, slow migrations, necessary for survival. There are no borders here, no ownership, only awareness. The first known people reached what is now Tennessee around 12,000 years ago, near the end of the Ice Age, adapting to a changing environment. They do not reshape the land. They learn its rhythm, and that rhythm begins to shape them in return. Time passes, and the silence fills. Smoke rises in measured lines above cleared earth. Voices gather in open spaces, echoing across carefully shaped ground. Footsteps no longer wander. They return. A town stands here now. At its center, a mound rises, layered by hands that have worked for generations. It is not natural. It is deliberate. Around it, fields stretch outward in order. Corn grows in rows that mark planning, not chance. Storage fills. Trade expands. Structure holds. By the time centuries pass into the first millennium, societies emerge that are complex, organized, and deeply rooted in this land. Inside a thatched home, a family prepares for a ceremony as light enters slowly through woven walls. Outside, leaders stand elevated above the plaza, watching movement below. Power now has a physical form. It can now be seen. The sound fades gradually. The plaza empties without warning. Paths lose their edges. Fields soften under neglect. Structures remain, but their purpose dissolves. No single moment marks the end. No final battle explains the absence. Instead, something quieter takes hold. Between the late pre-contact centuries and the early waves of European influence, these large settlements begin to decline. What remains is a reduction in population and activity. Grass overtakes gathering places. Wood returns to soil. The land absorbs what once defined it. Because not all endings are marked by destruction. Some are marked by silence. And that silence creates space. Space that does not stay empty for long. Movement returns. But it is different now. Across this land, multiple nations define presence through motion, agreement, and conflict. To the west, Chickasaw hunters move across wide territories, controlled and deliberate, shaping influence through strength and strategy. To the east, Cherokee towns rise along river valleys, forming communities that balance diplomacy and defense. Between them, the land is never neutral. It is negotiated. At a council fire, voices rise and fall as leaders weigh alliances and risks. At a trading post, deerskins are exchanged for metal goods, tools, and weapons, each transaction shifting the balance slightly. Nothing here is static. No single power dominates. Instead, the land becomes a system of balance, maintained through awareness and constant adjustment. The first sign is not sight, but sound. Metal against movement. Armor brushing through forest. Voices unfamiliar in tone and purpose. Spanish expeditions pass through with urgency, demanding resources, leaving disruption behind them. Later, French traders arrive with different intentions, but equal consequence. At a place where salt draws both animals and people, a small outpost forms, trade growing steadily as goods and influence begin to shift. Then the British arrive, not always physically, but through maps and declarations that claim control over land they have not fully seen. European powers draw territorial boundaries that do not align with existing indigenous systems. After the 7 Years' War, Britain claimed greater authority over the region and issued the Proclamation of 1763, drawing a boundary meant to limit westward settlement. It did not hold. A boundary is declared, meant to contain expansion. It does not hold. Settlers move forward anyway, step by step, ignoring restrictions. Because once land is imagined as possession, movement becomes inevitable, and movement begins to accelerate. Cabins rise where forest once stretched unbroken. Smoke curls upward in steady lines, and the sound of axes striking wood replaces the quieter rhythms that came before. There is no clear authority here, no stable system, so one is created. In dim interiors lit by lantern light, agreements are written, rules are formed, and governance begins not from tradition, but from immediate need. In 1772, Watauga settlers created the Watauga Association, a written local arrangement for self-government in an area outside formal colonial administration. But pressure does not ease. Conflict continues with native nations. Distance from established power creates instability. Settlers made repeated attempts at stable self-government, including the short-lived state of Franklin in the 1780s, but these efforts failed before Tennessee achieved statehood in 1796. But the idea remains. Eventually, recognition arrives. In 1796, Tennessee is admitted as a state, its boundaries defined, its authority recognized. On paper, order exists, but the land itself remains unresolved. Because formal recognition does not erase the forces already in motion, it only reshapes them. The land becomes more than a place to live. It becomes a system of agricultural production. Fields expand beyond subsistence. Crops are grown not for survival, but for profit. Rivers carry goods outward. Wealth concentrates inward. With growth comes influence. Political figures rise from this system, shaped by its demands and opportunities. War reinforces identity. Service becomes pride. But beneath that identity, another force operates. In the 1830s, Cherokee removal through Tennessee became part of the Trail of Tears, as families were rounded up and forced west under federal authority. They carry what they can. They leave what they cannot. Movement begins, not as migration, but as removal. And it leaves something behind that does not disappear. Even when people are forced to leave it, the tension does not settle. it turns inward. The state divides along lines that have already formed: economic, geographic, social. Each region holding a different vision of what the future should be. Debate turns into fracture. Fracture turns into war. Tennessee becomes a battleground, not just because of its location, but because of its divisions. The American Civil War tears through the land, leaving fields scarred, towns disrupted, and families permanently divided. Rivers and railroads become strategic arteries, fought over repeatedly, each control point shifting the balance of power. The ground absorbs it all. And when the war ends, the system that existed before cannot return, because something fundamental has been broken, and what replaces it is uncertain. For a moment, change feels possible. Communities rebuild, institutions form, and new systems of participation begin to emerge, offering a vision of inclusion that had previously been denied. Black Tennesseans establish schools, churches, and networks of support. But the resistance is already forming. It reorganizes through law, through policy, through quiet restriction. What had begun to open begins to close again. Voting becomes limited. Access becomes controlled. The system shifts from visible conflict to structured exclusion, because power has adapted. And adapted power does not need to announce itself. It only needs to endure. The transformation continues, not through politics this time, but through infrastructure. Rivers are altered. Flow is controlled. Electricity spreads into places that once relied on darkness. Machines replace patterns that existed for generations. The land is reshaped again, this time by engineering. Light reaches into homes that once ended their day at sunset. But in another part of the state, something quieter and more secretive begins. During World War II, the secret city of Oak Ridge was built in Tennessee as part of the Manhattan Project, with tightly controlled access and highly compartmentalized work. Those involved do not see the full picture, but the outcome will extend far beyond this place. Sound rises again, but differently. Music emerges as both expression and connection, blending traditions from different communities into something that travels beyond borders. In cities, in rural spaces, in churches and clubs, sound becomes a way of carrying history forward. It reflects struggle. It reflects belief. It reflects change. The struggle continues, not over land this time, but over rights, recognition, and equality. People gather in streets, in buildings, in spaces where presence itself becomes a statement. In the 20th century, civil rights activism in Tennessee challenged segregation and exclusion through organized protest, student activism, church networks, and legal struggle. Moments of confrontation lead to moments of change, though never evenly and never without cost. The past remains present, shaping every step forward. The land today holds all of it at once. Cities rise over layers of history that have never fully disappeared. Roads follow paths shaped long before they were paved. Voices continue to debate what this place means and who it belongs to. Because it has never meant just one thing. It is a convergence of histories, of claims, of movements, and none of them fully replace the others. What matters is not survival itself, but what it demands. This land never stays the same. It changes everything that moves through it. The river keeps moving. The ground remembers. And nothing that happens here ever truly fades.